Welcome to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsh. In each episode, Andrew interviews industry leaders. We'll hear their real-time opinions on today's market, their background and unique career highlights, and guidance for newcomers into the industry. You can find this show at scholarkirsh.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now here's the host of Real Talk, Andrew Kirsh.
Episode 86 of Real Talk, and the first one of 2026. Happy New Year to all of you. As I alluded to earlier, I had an amazing trip to the Middle East and India, principally to attend Bonnie Coley's wedding. For those that you may not know, Bonnie is the voiceover of the intro and outro of Real Talk, and she worked at Sklar Kirsh for a couple years. It was the first time that Courtney and I had been to the Middle East, other than Israel, and to India. And I think I'm going to do an entire podcast on my travels to the region, specifically India, 10 days, 5 of which we celebrated Bonnie's wedding. It is an experience that if you haven't experienced an Indian wedding, you're missing out. And just the warmth of the people, the extravaganza of the event, and the colors, the attire, the dresses, the outfits. And yes, Courtney and I did go all out and wear custom formal Indian attire. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I can't wait to share more details with you on an upcoming podcast. Today, I have my good friend and client, Larry Jacobson, on the podcast. Larry is the president and CEO of Jacobson Equities, an interesting background where he went from music executive to real estate owner-operator, and now owns a lot of multifamily buildings throughout the West Coast and really throughout the country. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Larry Jacobson. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I am here with my good friend, golf partner, and client, Larry Jacobson, president and CEO of Jacobson Equities. Larry, thank you for coming into the Sklar Kirsh Real Talk podcast studio.
Thank you for joining me. Pleasure to be here.
I know you had to travel far, about 7 minutes, 8 minutes?
I think it was 9.
It was 9.
It was 9. I tried to stay really west of Bundy, but I came east today.
Yeah, it's funny. Courtney always wanted to stay west of, Allenford, I think. But then the Palisades fire occurred, and now our whole life is east of Allenford. But we're very happy in Santa Monica.
I'm glad.
I digress. We don't need to have a whole conversation about the fire, but let's talk about you. I would say most of my clients who are in the real estate business, they either started as a lawyer, as a CPA. You are a lawyer, but you started in the music business. So I want to talk about Jacobson Equities, but first we got to talk about this music business. Tell us, how did you get into the music business?
So as you pointed out, I am a lawyer. I graduated in '88, and I started working at a big firm, Buchalter, Niemer, Fields & Younger, as a real estate lawyer. And it's a great time to be a lawyer if you think about it. There was end of the '80s, so multi-state leveraged buyouts is sort of the beginning of my career and as a real estate lawyer. And then you get to 90, 91, and now it's the savings and loan crisis. And so there's all these workouts. So there were a lot of big, sexy deals to do. I just hated it. I thought it was boring. And the other problem with it was that I was bringing in a lot of business because I would write speeches and then I would schlep my wife down to the Palmdale Board of Realtors Monday night monthly meeting, and I would give a speech on list pendants.
That's a good wife.
It's a very good wife. I mean, it's one of those stories you have that as you become more successful, at least you have a couple of little war stories.
Yeah.
So, and then I would repurpose the speech to the Norwalk Board of Realtors Thursday morning breakfast, which is all designed to say to brokers, you can trust me, I'm the lawyer that won't blow your deal. And through that, I brought in a lot of business. But what I didn't like about being at a law firm was, as a third-year lawyer, and I was getting whatever, the top bonuses and raises, but as a third-year lawyer, if you had a killer year, next year you couldn't be a seventh-year lawyer. You were still going to be a fourth-year lawyer, and I thought that was really limiting. So I was unhappy. I thought, well, maybe it's the firm. But the reality of it is a great firm. I like the people. So one day my mother says to me, well, maybe you just need to think of the entire universe, not just think, oh, well, it's about being at a different firm. And it didn't immediately click, but it maybe is. I don't know if it's a week, a month, whatever. I'm driving down the 10 freeway and a song by Faith No More, who I love, comes on the radio, and I realized nothing that I was going to do that day was going to make me feel the way that song made me feel. And I've always loved music. I had played trombone. I played guitar since I was 14. I played in bands throughout high school, a little bit in college. So music was just in my soul. Literally from that moment, something clicked. I drove down the 10, got on the 110, went up to the 25th story of what was then the San Juan Bank Plaza building on 601 South Fig.
Yeah.
And I decided I was no longer a real estate lawyer. I was getting into the music business. So I called my sister, who at the time was like a mid-level development executive at Universal. She's now, she's a producer. Nina Jacobson produces The Hunger Games, Crazy Rich Asians, a bunch of TV shows, like the O.J. Simpson documentary and so forth. But at the time,
that was good, by the way.
It was really good. Yeah. She won an Emmy for that.
Oh, wow.
At the time, she was, like I say, she was just getting started in her career. I call her up and I say, I'm getting into the music business. And she says, oh, that's such a scummy business. And I said, well, all right, that'll be my angle. I'll be the person you can trust. But I didn't really know anybody in the music business, so I started making a bunch of different phone calls and so forth. And one day, one of my good friends, Jason Sloan, who was a college buddy, a fraternity brother, best man at my wedding, he is an entertainment lawyer, a really prominent entertainment lawyer. He was at a firm, Hanson Jacobson, Teller
Sure.
and Hoberman, at the time. Now he has his own firm. He said, meet Ken Hertz. Ken is the music department, is one of the two music department lawyers. He took me out, gave me some information on the field, and then one thing led to another. I started networking, meeting a lot of different people. Long story short, Ken Hertz calls me later. Giant Records is looking for a number 2 lawyer. And Giant Records had just done the New Jack City soundtrack. It had just signed and broken Color Me Bad. This was 1991. So I did an interview, and I got the job. And I took a 45% pay cut. When I got the job, my mother said, I've never seen so many people ecstatic over a guy that just took a 45% pay cut. But now I was the number 2 lawyer. And about a year after I got there, I went to Irving Azoff. So the Giant Records was a joint venture between Irving Azoff and Warner Brothers Records. And I went to Irving and I said, look, there's a soundtrack album and everybody in the business has passed on it. But if you look around, people are wearing bell-bottoms and platform shoes. The 70s are hot right now. It's a $300,000 deal, but I can get it for $35,000 because nobody wants it. And he said, great, because he thought it was cool that somebody outside of the A&R department, artist and repertoire, was bringing in an album.
So you were stepping outside of your legal functions and had your business hat on.
That's right. That's right. Or creative, right? And again, everybody in the business had passed, including Giant Records A&R department.
And who was on this soundtrack?
Well, it was the soundtrack to the movie Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
And it ended up going multi-platinum. And
you guys did that deal?
I did the deal, but I was the creative executive. So because nobody else wanted it, I became the creative executive. He gave me a point on the record. We did a follow-up that went gold. It's one of the most classic soundtracks in the music business history. And that was sort of the start of my career, broadening from a solely business to a business and creative role. And just over time, I rose up to be the head of business and legal affairs while also doing A&R, and then...
Is that common for someone that
no. It's not like there's no lawyers who end up becoming something else within the music business, something more creative, but it's not obviously a common track. And eventually I rose up to run that company and be a partner in it. And I signed a band called Disturbed that I broke that has sold 14 million records, has had 5 consecutive #1 albums on the Billboard charts.
So were you just like going to the Troubadour and these local clubs to find undiscovered bands, or what were you doing at
To
that
some
time?
extent. Meaning, yes, but I was also a lawyer. So it wasn't like I could be out all night like the A&R guys were. But because I had this very successful record with Dazed and Confused, that made me popular, and helped me, grow within the company. So I was getting things sent to me. In a Disturbed's case, I get this 4-song cassette sampler. This was 1999, I think. And it's got 4 songs, one of which is Stupefy, which went on to become the first single. The other of which was Down with the Sickness, which and everybody knows. And that there were 2 other songs.
You're assuming I know this song.
Trust me, you know it. I'm not going to make the vocal sound that he makes.
By the
on
way,
it.
you see who's above my head here.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
For those that can't see it or listening, you too. My musical knowledge starts and stops with U2, and then anything that my 11-year-old daughter Clementine likes.
She has wonderful taste. You'll know the song.
Okay.
So anyway, I went and I signed them, and that band became huge. I did the Steely Dan record that won all the Grammys in 2001. I had nothing to do with it creatively whatsoever, but they basically tell you, here's the masters, go pick them up. Then you had to market it. And so our team did what I think was a fantastic job of marketing the record. And then Irving wanted to sell Giant Records back to Warner Brothers. This is when the AOL Time Warner merger was happening, and there was an opportunity to sell Giant. So we sold it. I got paid. I left. I went to Capitol. I was the #2 executive there for a little bit, and then I left and I started my own firm. And I stumbled literally across a band that was living with their parents.
And we're talking about what, early 2000s now?
This was 2002.
Okay.
They were living with their parents. They couldn't sell 200 tickets in their own hometown in Huntington Beach. And I thought they could be the biggest rock band in the world.
Where did you meet them, or how did you hear them?
You realize as you get older, Andrew, how much of your life is luck,
Yeah.
serendipity.
Sure.
I called my money manager to say I was leaving Capitol to start my own company. The guy that picks up the phone is his partner, who I'd never spoken to. And he says, well, Larry, it's Ben. Jim's traveling today. Can I help you? And I said, well, I just left Capitol and I started my own company. I just wanted to chat. And he knew what I had, accomplished in the music business. So he said to me, my brother has an independent label. Would you mind taking him out to lunch and giving him some tips? I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. I drive out to into Van Nuys, the industrial area of Van Nuys, also known as the porn district, I think, at the time. And I go out to lunch with his brother, and he hands me a stack of CDs that he's put out. And I go home that night, I'm in my study, I'm throwing them in, and this 1 and 26-second song comes on the radio, and they're screaming and they're singing on it, and I think this is going to be the biggest band in the world. So I drove down to meet them. I met them. They really weren't interested in meeting me at all. I take them out to dinner at the Rainbow. And
On Sunset, yep.
on Sunset. And they sit down and they go, look, we don't need a manager. We don't want some guy telling us what to do. We started drinking. By the end of dinner, I was their manager. And that band is Avenged Sevenfold. So that band has sold 10 or 11 million records, multiple #1s, one of the biggest touring acts in the world, sell out arenas, stadiums around the world. And I managed them for 20 years, from 2002 until 2022. And there was overlap because over those years, I managed Alanis Morrissette, I managed Michael Bolton, and I managed Slash.
Slash had a single career?
Yes.
Or
yes.
solo career, I should say.
I mean, there's an interesting story. I don't know if the real estate audience is that interested. I can tell you later. But
at some point, we'll pivot over to real estate.
But I really only loved managing Avenged Sevenfold. And as my father got to the end of his life in 2012, I decided to take over the family business. I had managed some of our family's buildings because when I graduated from Berkeley and was about to start law school, he said, I want you to manage some of our buildings in Los Angeles, even though we had a management company, just so you learn the family business. So I did that for a while. And then obviously I was his lawyer. And then when I was a real estate lawyer, and then I became his co-general partner in our deals. And all of our deals were in California at the time. So he said, he wanted me to learn the business, so I did. But then I got into the music business, and then my sister's in the film business, and they kind of figured, well, that's that, right? But by 2012, the music business had changed a lot. And I looked at it and thought, I really only love managing this one band. The others were not as interesting to me. I'm really what you see here. I'm just a corporate lawyer who knows how to protect artists and make them a lot of money. I'm not a guy with a wallet chain and a hoodie that's out all night at clubs till 3 a.m.
I think you may do that. I just that's
secretly.
Yeah.
So anyway, I decided at that point I wanted to do something and grow something bigger. My dad had a very successful business, but it had been moribund for a decade or more because they hadn't bought buildings. They had just kept the ones that they owned, but he'd built an incredible platform with hundreds of investors who trusted him. And, I had no way of knowing I could be as good as my father would be as a real estate sponsor. But I knew the one thing that he was known for I could do, which was be ethical. So, he was known for obviously having a great track record, but first and foremost, people thought of him as somebody they trusted because if you think about syndication, it's a field that has a lot of unsavory characters, meaning people who, in the 70s, there were some fly-by-night guys. In the 80s, it's the tax-motivated deals. Now what you have, are guys who all of a sudden with low interest rates, 5-6 years ago, were able to throw together deals, raise some money, do it on social media, but they weren't operators. They were over-leveraged. They were all had floating rate debt. And now you see the chickens coming home to roost yet again. So when people trust you, that's really your most valuable currency as a sponsor.
For sure. In any walk of life, your reputation is all you have. It takes a generation to create one, and it could take 10 seconds to ruin it. So when you were making this transition, your dad either passed away or was getting sick, and you felt that you wanted to transition into the family business. What was it like going from the music business and having just that, sense of euphoria? You're seeing your bands perform in front of thousands of people in sold out arenas, to now you're looking at Excel spreadsheets and talking about, broken toilets and kitchen countertops. It's such a different business.
So it is a different business. I wouldn't say I spent a lot of time talking about broken toilets.
Fair enough, but you know what I mean.
We certainly talk about countertops and backsplashes. That takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
The way I would look at it, as you get older, you start seeing things in ways you wouldn't have seen it when you were younger and you didn't have the context of being able to look backwards. So when you think about the music business, it seems, it's glamorous or it's wild, it's different. Certainly to some extent that's true. But in essence, it's about making deals. It's about strategy. It's about what is the right way to roll out this record. How do you get a radio promoter to play your record? How do you finance or get your record label to make an expensive enough video that MTV wants to play it? And then how do you, ultimately get MTV to do that? How do you get your record? Man, this is a different time. This isn't now. This was years ago when it was how do you get your record on the Powerwall at Best Buy during the holidays? Because it's discretionary at Best Buy's part. It's also, you have to pay. So, and ultimately, as a manager, it's how do you make a great publishing deal? How do you make a great record deal? And ultimately, how to protect your artist against people who would take advantage of them. Well, in real estate, it's obviously about finding a great building, finding a great band that you believe in and you're passionate about. It's about communicating that effectively to prospective investors. It's about the strategy of how do you execute your business plan. It's about how do you protect your investors, meaning how do you put their interests first. So the similarities are greater than people might think. And then if we just narrow it down or distill it down even further, I just love making deals. So it's not as profound a difference as it seems on the surface. Some of the hygienic factors, meaning, yeah, I'm not backstage, I'm not sitting at the soundboard at a huge show, and those were fun. But the music business has gone through a lot of changes, and if you sell tickets and you sell black T-shirts, you can be very successful making money. But a lot of other artists don't have the means, the drivers that used to help them make money if they're not really in a genre that tours a lot or can tour and command the ticket prices and the butts and seats. So I'd done it a long time.
Yeah. And so did you I know you were managing the family's real estate while you were managing bands. When you decided to go full-time into the real estate business, was your father still alive? Did you work under your father in terms of sourcing buildings, buying buildings, talking to investors, talking to lenders? I guess, how did you learn about the real estate business, or did you just dive into the deep end of the pool?
So I took over the business, if we want to put it this way, June of 2012, and my dad died in August. So, as you know, our business has grown dramatically since I took it over, right? We've expanded nationally. We buy conventional multifamily as well as student housing. We buy Class A as well as, garden-style value add. And my father hasn't seen any of it.
Yeah.
And, that's, thank God, I've had a very blessed life, but one of the sadnesses I have is that he doesn't have a chance to see some of these deals we bought that I know that he would like. And now my son is also in the business as an acquisitions associate for us, Jonah, and I hope that he will have the opportunity to at least share, he's the junior man on the team, that's for sure, but he has the opportunity to share ideas and his vision for something, and I'm here. And hopefully we'll be here for a long time. But that's one of the dynamics in a family business. So to answer your question, I'd already made deals. I was a real estate lawyer. I understood sort of the fundamentals, but, I had to learn a lot of it myself, and it didn't happen overnight because we needed to modernize systems. Mm-hmm. We needed to modernize some of the personnel because they were really just in the property management business at that point. And then I had to go to investors who thought my dad walked on water, but hadn't been asked to invest in a long time. And I had to figure out which ones were still wanted to be active and which ones were not. So there was a big, printout of all of the names, and I was picking up the telephone and calling people and seeing who was in and who was not. And to my father's credit, he'd had such a great track record that people were appreciative that there was another generation and that would hopefully carry on the same approach of sort of conservative, judicious acquisition of real estate and competent operation of it.
So let's dive in with respect to your company and the real estate properties in the portfolio. You said your father focused and bought exclusively in California. And over the last several years, as you and I have worked together and gotten to know each other, a lot of your deals now are outside of California. So what made that switch, or maybe I should say addition, of looking outside of California to buy real estate?
So part of my father's feeling was real estate is a local business. You want to be at least no more than an hour away via airplane to be able to go look at a building, which I share. But obviously I'm younger than my father was, so I have more energy to be on, okay, it's longer plane rides, but I'm able to do that. I also felt like I felt that it was limiting. I felt for us to say we were only going to buy in certain California markets, at the time, right now California looks fairly priced, but at that time, in the sort of late teens of the 2000s, it's 2014, let's call it, or middle teens, cap rates were low in California, and I felt there were other places where you could get it. I also ended up getting into student housing. Really, I stumbled into it. I sold a deal in Sacramento. The broker got a listing on a 240-unit student housing property at Cal State Chico, and he says, you should come look at it, because it was not purpose-built. It was conventionally built, 1980s construction. I didn't really know what I didn't know. I went out there, I looked at this building, I think, hey, it looks like everything else we own. 0.6 of a mile from campus, the university was growing. Everything in the market was full. And I could see they were only getting parental guarantee. They were only signing 9-month leases. And I thought we can get 12-month leases, get parental guarantees on them, and then improve revenue that way. There were other expenses that I saw we could cut. And I just thought, well, this looks like a good building. And I was fortunate because we inherited, this building had been owned by Aimco and then by an offshoot of Aimco called University Communities. This team was so good that the fact that I didn't understand a lot about student housing at the time, including the lease-up cadence starting at the year end and then moving into the winter and spring of the following year, the turnover schedule and so forth, this team held my hand. Or as I put it, it was like when you sign a great band, your strategy is duck and get out of the way. Yeah. Let the band be the band. And this was like, let this amazing team at West Park Plaza be themselves and do what they do. But I was, I think, savvy enough to say, all right, well, if we're going to do this, then let's learn this business. Let's not be carpetbaggers. So we said, well, let's learn from them, and we did. And then we bought a deal at Texas State. We own at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And we own at Texas A&M. So we've decided over time, well, all right, let's be good at student housing. Let's not just have stumbled into it and do a one-off. So we have a certain type of student housing that we buy, proximate to a flagship Power 4 university, proximate meaning pedestrian to the school, and affordable, little a affordable, meaning we typically are not buying the Class A brand new on the single best street. We may be buying either Class A on the A- location, or we're buying, the last deal we bought at Texas A&M was 2009 construction, but walking distance to the biggest university in the country.
Yeah.
So we just decided, we'll just grow and we'll find things and we'll just be good at it. And then the first deal I bought out of state was Texas State deal, which was student. And then we ended up going into Seattle, and I fell in love with Seattle, and I thought there's some great opportunities here. I bought a couple deals there, and then in 2018 and 19, and I sold them at the peak of the market and made a lot of money doing that. We went to Denver, and we started buying deals there. We own in DFW. We own now in Portland. We are now looking to go back into Seattle. At least that's a possibility. But here's the funny part, Andrew. When I look at our portfolio, the best, measured by most consistent performing assets, measured by occupancy, measured by rent growth, and measured by collections, are in California. That seems inconsistent, right? You'd think, well, in California, you got regulatory risk. That's true. But the flip side of regulatory risk is it's impossible to build in this state.
Yep.
So if you're not somebody that is so fixated on, oh, I have to have vintage 2000 or later, there's fantastic properties in incredible markets like Pleasanton, where we own, Poway, San Diego County, we're buying now.
Yeah, so I wanted to lean in on that. So for several years, the vast majority of the transactions that we were working on were in the Sun Belt or Pacific Northwest. Before COVID, I would say Pacific Northwest. Post-COVID, Sun Belt. But in the last, we'll call it 12 months, there seems to be a resurgence, an appetite for coastal markets, but business-friendly locations within those coastal markets. And I know that you have identified some, I don't know if you want to talk about any of the current potential acquisitions that you are identifying, or just sort of your thesis as to whether what I said is resonating with you and your company.
Well, I would say it is. I think all the markets we own in are great, but there's headaches now. This has become a challenging business in the last few years. Obviously it started with COVID, and COVID led to a domino effect. It led to all of a sudden rents go up. There's a lot of new construction. Interest rates were still low. A lot of stuff they start swinging hammers, and then now interest rates are going up because inflation starts to kick in because of COVID. A strange sort of demand side inflation. Or I guess people would say it may have supply side. You couldn't get the stuff into the country. Either way, it was transient. It should have been transient. It seems like it was transient. Federal Reserve starts raising interest rates. So now you have overbuilding in markets like Dallas, overbuilding in markets like Denver. You have, higher rents sometimes trigger regulatory pushback or regulatory challenges. You've seen that in Denver. So, we have Class A assets in Dallas. They're beautiful. They're in incredible, submarkets. They're great, but we've had to lower rents to meet the market. Our buildings are full. It's not as much fun as raising rents. Our buildings in Denver, total headache.
Yep.
Total headache. Too much new construction. You had an influx of immigrants, some maybe coming from Texas when the governor there was sending them out, 43,000 new immigrants, and then you have a government that used to be called, let's call it purple. Governor Jared Polis, we thought, was very fair towards both the renters and landlords during COVID. Now it's not that way.
Yeah.
Now you look at these laws that have been passed, making it very difficult to do business, very difficult to screen tenants. It has become a culture of tenants not paying their rent. Again, our buildings are full. They're doing well, but they're not. We've got a great basis in these assets, and they're not as, we should be selling those deals right now. And instead, we're refinancing and then hanging on to them for a little while. So those are headaches. California buildings don't have headaches right now, if you know where to buy. So we own in Los Angeles, but we wouldn't buy there. We would not buy in San Jose or Richmond or Berkeley, probably avoid Concord. But we own in Pleasanton, not a lot of building there. We're buying a deal in Poway, San Diego County. This is the 7th safest city in the country.
Poway is?
Yes.
Wow.
In the state, sorry, in the state. All the schools are rated 9 out of 10. There's one apartment for every 20 residents in Poway. There's one apartment for every 10 residents in San Diego County, 7 residents in Los Angeles. And deals never trade there. There's only been 3 trades in Poway of over 25 units in the last 20 years. So this is...
Why do you think that is?
Because it's undersupplied, and owners, when they own there, they don't want to sell.
Now, is there a concern that you have or your investors articulate to you about that California, you just don't know what the rules of the game are going to be in terms of rent control and other political decisions and legislation? And therefore, is there more risk of owning in California because of that?
Well, first of all, I think it depends on where you buy. Every city in California, every county in California has its own demographics, has its own composition. So we own in Orange County. And Orange County politically, it's not quite what it once was, but it's not the Central Valley. But I think it's lower risk politically in terms of restrictive local legislation. Poway, there is no history of restrictive local legislation. So you're subject to AB 1482, the state rent control, which is, you can't raise rents more than inflation plus 5%, but there's also vacancy decontrol, which is the most important thing, right? It didn't overturn Costa-Hawkins. So to us, you can do business in a city that's governed by state rent control. You're trying to avoid the ones that have more restrictive local rent control, like Los Angeles. But the flip side of it is that, so you're talking about risk. Well, what about the risk that something will change? It is offset, it's not non-existent, but it is offset by the fact California makes it so hard to build. You are buying almost by definition in supply-constrained markets. And those markets, if you've curated them correctly in terms of the potential for additional local regulatory risk, give you the opportunity to enjoy consistent, measured rent growth, consistent occupancy, and depending upon where, like I wouldn't buy in Hayward, but a place like Pleasanton, which has a household income of $180,000, something like that, our collections are 100%. So San Diego, collections are going to be 100%. So I think there's risks everywhere you go. You would not have identified Denver as a high-risk market. You would not have identified Seattle as a high-risk market politically.
Yep.
But there you are. And then you look at markets like Dallas, which I would not say are risky politically, but certainly you look at Dallas, any place in Texas is always going to have an ebb and flow of new supply. So no market is perfect. Essentially all we're doing is trying to underrate the individual risks. And right now, to us, that is screaming California.
So let's talk about on the investor side and the capital side. Your father, before you went with the syndication model, you have raised money through that model as well. I sit here today, and a lot of our clients are frustrated by the return expectations of more institutional capital looking for a net 18% to them, and they're just not those type of deals. I don't even know how the institutions are transacting. They're looking for post-2000 construction, in supply-constrained markets, getting an 18 return, and all my operator sponsor clients say, good luck, you're not going to be able to transact. So as you are, as we approach 2026, and you want to buy more properties, are you looking to your syndication investor base? Are you looking to expand your investor client base? I mean, how are you going to be able to capitalize these deals that you want to buy in the next 12, 18 months?
Well, it's really dependent on deal size. We have a very strong fundraising capability for our syndication deals. Typically we'll buy up to $100 million, though at a certain point we'll do that with exchange funds, meaning if it's just fresh capital, we're not going to get all the way up to $100 million. So if we see a deal where we feel that it's appropriate in terms of all the different criteria our syndication clients are looking for, like Haven Poway, which is the deal we're buying now, then we'll buy that and we'll syndicate it. We are also expanding into a more hybrid model where we will look for institutional JV partners. We have a deep Rolodex, not in small part due to you, and the introductions that you've made. And so it is true that the general institutional response is what you said, high teens, late 2000 or later vintage, but they're not all that way. And it's challenging because some institutions are agnostic as to asset type. So they don't have to buy multifamily, they can go out and buy data centers. For us, it's obviously different. We have an asset, this is what we do. But there are some who have lower, return hurdles. And we just brought in Grant Geisen. So Grant headed up Southern California acquisitions for Pacific Urban for 18 years. He is, aside from the fact being, wildly well networked, he is just a very intelligent guy who understands the market, has incredible relationships. And, what he specializes in, we've always had a good history of off-market deals. But if you look at his prolific deal, acquisitions track record, the majority of it, at least half, but I think more than half, was off-market opportunities. That obviously is something that is of appeal to institutions. It's syndicated clients care too, but they don't tend to have the same religious, fervor about it. So, we believe right now we're in a very good place to source off-market opportunities through his process and network that will give us opportunities that will be appealing to institutions, and everything else we're going to syndicate, which works. Syndication's got its challenges because you're essentially curating every deal to all of your investors. I've got 650 investors or so, and I'm thinking, well, Miss Smith likes IRR, and Mr. Smith is a cash flow guy. So you have to make each deal sort of check all of their boxes. But when you do, and you have a good track record, they're very responsive.
Yeah. All right, last question on real estate. The Fed lowered rates a couple days ago. The 10-year Treasury, I don't think, has moved. It's still, 4.15, 4.18.
Right.
How do you think, I'm not going to ask you where do you think rates are going to go. You're not, even Jerome Powell doesn't know necessarily what the bond market's going to do. Are we in an interest rate environment where you think there will be more deals in 2026? What do you expect to see in terms of deal velocity overall across our industry? Because over the last 3 years, it has been quiet. It's been challenging for people to make it work. There's been a bid-ask spread. People have been playing more defense than offense. And for 3 years, we've been talking about there's so much capital on the sidelines from the institutions. Put your crystal ball, or look at your crystal ball. Where do you see deal velocity over for 2026?
Well, my understanding is that you have a significant number of funds, older vintage funds, that are termed out. They are at a point where they've extended the term of their funds. They had a couple of options to extend. They're at 10 years or whatever, and now they need to start disposing of assets and giving liquidity back to their LPs. So that's going to create deal velocity. Some of them might go through, might do some sort of a secondary, fund, but a lot of them aren't going to be able to. You also have older vintage funds, meaning within 3 to 5 years, who are at the end of their investment period and they need to start buying. So I think we're going to start seeing more velocity. I also think that it is not believable to me that all the debt out there that is maturing or has matured and been extended is just going to stay on, as a loan on a bank's books without there being, at some point, the bank says it's just time. And so we think that will create some pressure on velocity. But I also think we don't know the deals that, let's say the funds do end up starting to dispose of assets. We don't know, are they going to dispose of their crap and figure out ways of hanging on to the other stuff? We don't know if banks will do the same thing. The stuff that makes its way into the market is the stuff they just don't believe in, and they'll figure out a way to keep the other loans on their books. I don't think anybody really knows that. I don't know that anybody got paid really well for trying to have a crystal ball, certainly not in the last few years. So our attitude is you just roll up your sleeves, you just work harder, you work more hours, you uncover more rocks, and you kiss more toads.
Yeah. Do they kiss back, the toads?
Well, Haven Poway.
There you go. All right, you ready to have some fun with the world-renowned Real Talk lightning round set of questions?
I'm ready.
All right. This is the hardest part of the podcast here. All right, I know you're a golfer. We've golfed a lot, and I've heard about these epic trips that I was not invited on. Maybe I was, but two little kids.
You're welcome anytime.
How about the best golf course you've ever played on?
I would say North Berwick.
And where is that?
North Berwick is, I think it's Lothian, East Lothian in Scotland, so it's further south. It's just super fun, especially the back nine. There's very famous holes there that were influential to golf holes around the world, and you get to play them, and there's stories about them. And I also shot a 37 on the back nine, so I have a really positive association with it.
I am sure you go to sleep at night and you still remember every single shot you had on that back nine.
I do, as a matter of fact, because it was also, I remember playing it and going, God, I'm playing out of my mind, and I don't know that I could replicate this. Like, it was somebody other than Larry Jacobson hitting those balls.
What was the weather like?
Weather was nice. We got lucky on that trip. We only had one. Well, I take that back. There was no rain except it drizzled a little bit on the front nine, but it was just a little bit of drizzle. It was great. And I birdied the pit, which is the hole where you have to hit it over the fence.
Oh, over a fence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there's a stone wall.
Oh, yeah, sure. How about best concert you've ever been to?
Rolling Stones and Guns N' Roses, early 80s at the Coliseum.
I was too young to go, but I do remember my sister going. She's 7 years older than I am.
I would also put in that category, I saw, before anybody knew who they were, I saw Nirvana at the Palace right when Nevermind had come out, but it wasn't yet popular.
So what, it's like 1990 or 89, 90?
Yeah, it would have
right
been
then?
probably 91. Yeah.
91.
I think it was 91.
And so when you saw them, you were like, this Kurt Cobain, I mean,
Just incredible.
This is going to be the new it band. What about today? Like, what acts do you like today? Are there any acts that you would go and see? Not someone that's been around for 40 years, but
No. I mean, and it doesn't, and that's not because they don't exist and they don't deserve my attention. It's just that I don't generally like or get attracted to a lot of the new music out there, except for in country. So there's an act I definitely love, who's not really new, called Turnpike Troubadours, who are amazing. And I've seen them, but Chris Stapleton.
yeah.
But in terms of what I love a lot of different types of music, certainly rock or hard rock, no. And I'm not going to go see
Sabrina Carpenter with me and my daughter. 6 nights at Crypto.com.
Yeah,
all
my
sold
kids are
out.
just a little older, so they don't call me up and say, let's go to Sabrina Carpenter.
You and Pam, you don't go see Sabrina?
No. We'll go out and we'll see, Queen, or we'll see Black Sabbath, or we'll see Elton John or the Eagles, that sort of stuff. So it's funny because a guy who sort of created a career out of understanding music that was younger than he was, now I'm just like right with the rest of the guys my age, just listening to a bunch of classic rock, which I'm embarrassed about, but it's just what I've become.
I assume you've been to Nashville.
I have many times. We used to have an office there.
Okay. I mean, what a great
the
music
best.
scene. That one street, it's phenomenal.
It's incredible.
All right. Favorite show that you're currently watching or just finished on TV? And you can't say Backstage Dodgers.
I would say Landman.
It is a phenomenal show.
Isn't that great?
And Ali Larder?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is the whole Taylor Sheridan sort of understands what that viewer wants. He, I don't mean to be patronizing, but he has, sort of evolved because he's had been such a prolific, creator of TV. And to me, Landman is just sort of the culmination of putting it all together and finding just a great formula.
I think it's if shows could have children, it's Yellowstone, procreated with Friday Night Lights.
Well, that's a perfect example. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Kirsh.
Even I think the opening title song.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. We've gone, I don't know how long, 45 minutes, and we have not yet talked about sports. We're on a Dodger text chain that gets very active in October. I know you're a big Laker fan, and you went to Cal. I'm going to give you probably the most impossible question right now, okay? For 2026, you can only choose one. A Dodgers three-peat, a Lakers NBA championship, or a Cal national championship in football, which we know will never happen. So how about either Lakers or Dodgers?
Well, if you're going to force me to pick, I would say Dodgers three-peat. I mean, that team is just that good. They have all the right sort of emotional chemistry components to them. Dave Roberts, who you know, I've certainly had I've thrown a lot of things at TVs, back in 2017, 2018, but he, to me, has just proven himself to be just an incredible leader of men and, baseball manager and strategist, particularly when it counts, right? The decision to bring in Poway, the decision to play Rojas, this is what somebody does when they really understand the game at such an intrinsic level, but they also have the self-confidence, the internal fortitude to do those things. And I have a lot of respect, and my son will listen to this and he'll be like, I can't believe my dad's saying that. I want to kill him because he's been so critical of Dave Roberts. But I believe that early on he was taking too many cues from the front office, and I believe there's been an evolution, and he's allowed to be himself, and he's proven himself to be an incredible manager. I love the Lakers. I love Luka. I think this team is fantastic. We have season tickets. We go. But until you sort of figure out what the LeBron dynamic is going to be and all of that, I think it's just hard. I think they're playing well. I think Luka's amazing. Austin Reeves, incredible. You told me J.J. Redick said he's the single best athlete he's ever seen. But I like their chances. By the way, you didn't mention the Rams. The Rams almost certainly, the leading
You're right.
team.
I'm a Rams fan, but you are definitely more of a Rams fan than I.
I love the Rams, and I think my son and I were talking last night. He is without a doubt as good a GM as we've ever seen in any sport.
Yeah,
he compared him to the OKC GM.
Oh wow. I need you to do me a favor because Courtney. Says that I turned into an extremely angry person when I watched the Dodgers in October during the playoffs. And I said, I assure you, Courtney, every single one of my friends are having the same emotions. And she says, no, I don't believe it. You need to leave the house because you're bringing this negative energy in the house. And so I think I need Courtney to go over to your house next October so she can see that I'm just not the only crazy guy, and I'm like fever pitch, but I still walk around and I wonder, why do I still have a smile on my face? And this past World Series has definitely done it. Now, once they start playing games in April, and even though we know it doesn't mean anything because they're still going to get to the playoffs, and we're going to be texting, I can't believe Roberts did this and this and this with the relievers, we have to remind ourselves it's April.
Send her to my house in October, and I promise you, within minutes, she'll be running back to your house going, Andrew, you're such a mensch. Jacobson's impossible.
I will do that. All right, a couple final questions, and we'll get out of here. How about a market that you haven't yet transacted in that you would like to?
Well, that's a really, really good question. Nashville, Salt Lake City. There's areas of Nashville I'd like to buy in. Mm-hmm. Salt Lake City, and I'd like to buy a lot more student at the big schools. I love that asset class at the big schools. So we own a College Station. I don't own in Austin. I haven't owned in Austin. I would buy the University of Washington. There's a lot of areas. I buy University of Oregon. So Salt Lake City's overbuilt. Nashville's overbuilt. So, right now I feel like I look at our student assets, which are just killing it. Our Gainesville asset is 65%, 64, 65, pre-leased. This year's 98% full. It's 618 beds. It's 65% or 64, whatever it is, pre-leased for the following August.
Wow. And this is early in December.
Yeah. Not every year is like that. Our College Station asset's doing incredible at the market, 35%. Every market's different. But student has a lot of advantages, and one of the nice things about being able to be, we talked about being agnostic as to asset class. Well, I'm not agnostic fully. I'm not going to go buy industrial because I don't understand it. But we understand student, and it gives us the ability to toggle if we think the conventional story is just not as compelling.
Yeah. All right, final question. I know Jonah's working at your company now, and I'm sure other young people ask you for advice. So what would you say to someone who's just graduating college or 22 years old? They want to get into the real estate business. What advice do you give them? What should they do?
First of all, like anything, it's about who you work for first. You really want to associate yourself with somebody with the gray hair, somebody who's been through the wars. You know, when we're in school, you're told, don't look on your neighbor's, blue book to see what their answers are. In real life, you're supposed to.
That's interesting.
In real life, you're supposed to be educated by what people who are successful, who've achieved things, have done, and learn from them. And it never ends. As you know, I have peers who I ask, how do you do this? How would you approach this problem? So associating yourself with people with experience, ethics, a good track record, you can learn so much from them. And I think that's really, really critical. And I think some guys are like, well, I got to go out and start raising my own money, doing my own thing. That's not how you start. You might get to that point. But if you think about the guys who've come out of the big shops and then decided to start their own, shop and raise their own money, they've really benefited, and in a lot of cases done well, because they learned at the foot of some real giants in our industry.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, and you're one of the first people who sat in this chair who have framed it in that way. Look, Larry, I want to thank you for coming on to the show, but more than that, just our years of friendship, our attorney-client relationship, but it's really those days of us just shooting the shit about the Dodgers, playing golf together. I really value our relationship, and so thank you for it all.
It's my pleasure. I feel exactly the same way, and for those of you who have not yet had the opportunity to work with Andrew, he's as good a lawyer as there is, and the reason is because he brings the intangibles, not just the ability to be a smart guy, look at a contract, but the ability to give you advice that you respect and to make introductions to people you don't know. Those are the things that I value, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, and the next time I take Clementine to a concert, I'll make sure to give you an invite.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thank you.
And that's another episode of Real Talk.
You've been listening to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsh. You can catch prior episodes at scholarkirsh.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and for sharing this show with others.